Inspired Leaders. I am so happy to be here with all of you guys today. Thank you so much for joining us. We are just thrilled to have all of you. We started Inspired Leaders 6 years ago, which is insane. Yes, big round of applause. That's so awesome. And when we started, it was right around when Andy and I had started our company. And I left education to start Everest & Cooper and do this crazy entrepreneurial world. And I was terrified. Did anybody else leave a safe corporate job to come do what they're doing? It's really scary. It's very invigorating, but it's really scary. And I don't think that fear ever actually goes away. But one of the things that was happening is I spent a lot of time networking in this beautiful community and met a lot of people who had done the same. And so I asked them a lot of questions. How did you do this? How did you transition? Were you scared? Tell me about what happened. And I was gleaning a lot of insight and encouragement from others who had gone before me and had done what I wanted to do. And all of that kind of came to be when we started Inspired Leaders, and people were sharing their stories. And month after month, we ask our speakers to not only get up here on stage and just share their rah-rah and share their excitement and all the things that they've done, but to also share their shit. And it's true. We ask them to get deep and to get vulnerable and to really tell you about the journey that they've been on and the things that they've gone through and that they've navigated. And here's why. We all look around at each other and we think, they've never struggled. It's just me. I'm doing something wrong, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy, or I'm not something that we decide in our brains that we're not. And that's why we're not being successful, or that's why we can't do something, or that's why we're going through this struggle. But the reality is that we all go through struggles, and we all go through ups and downs, and we all go through scary moments that we don't know how we're going to get through. We all hit rock bottom probably more than once or twice in our lifetime. But the whole point is that we learn from those opportunities and we keep going and we don't quit and we grow inside of ourselves. We grow in our faith and in our community and in our businesses, and we keep going. And so we just think it is so important that month after month, people are coming up here and sharing their stories with you, but also really sharing that vulnerable, hard stuff that they've been through, so that all of us in this room know we are not alone. And I just hope that if nothing else comes from every time you come to Inspired Leaders every month, you know that you are not in this alone. We live in the best community to build a business and a life for ourselves and our families. And right here at Inspired Leaders every month, you are surrounded by people who are here to support you and to encourage you, to cry with you, to laugh with you, and to do whatever it is that you need as you're walking through this journey of life and of business. So I hope that you find that encouragement and that love here. And I am so grateful every month that we've had these amazing speakers who are willing to stand up on stage in front of a bunch of strangers and tell their stories. And I hope that you find encouragement in that too. So thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited for our speaker today, Larry Nail. We met Larry last year, and he has just been one of the biggest blessings in our lives, and we are so thrilled for him to share his story with you guys today. It is incredible and powerful, and he is such a strong and faithful man, and we are really happy to have him as one of our Inspired Leaders speakers. So please help me welcome Larry Nail.
Wow, that's a lot to think about, huh? Anyways, I'm so glad to be here. I appreciate everyone coming and listening to my story. I first want to thank Andy and Elizabeth for all their hard work. I mean, there's a lot that goes behind the scenes on what they do, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come and to share my story. So before I begin, I want to ask you a question. Has anyone ever felt like a failure and that your life was lacking in purpose? Twice a day. You may need a counselor. So let me ask you one more time. Has anyone ever felt like a failure, that your life was lacking in purpose? So I want to tell you a little bit about my story. This is my family. I grew up in a very loving home, great parents. They were married for over 50 years. That's me as a little boy. So it was a great family life. I was active in sports. I was active in sports. When I was 8 years old, I was learning to write in cursive, which is something now that they don't ever teach you to do. But I couldn't do it. And I remember standing in my room on my chalkboard trying to write my name in cursive, and I just couldn't do it. And I started to think immediately, I can't even write my name. How am I going to make it in life? I'll be a failure. So I was concerned about failing in life at a very, very early age, and also living up to other people's expectations. So from that, I became a real high achiever. I wanted to exceed in everything that I did. So I started out with one of the best decisions I've ever made, or probably the best decision I've ever made, was this lady here, Jenny, my wife. We got married. I had about 3.5 years. We got married about a year and a half into my college days, and then finished college in 3.5 years, working through the summers. So I was very motivated to do that. There's my graduation from college picture. I worked full-time and I went to school full-time. So there were no jobs available in the city where I was living, Memphis, which is surprising for what I wanted to do because it was a business degree. So I began to think again, am I missing something? Am I not good enough? Am I failing? So I was excited about the new opportunity, but I didn't know where I was going to go. So I had an opportunity to move far away from Memphis and from Tennessee to Louisiana. And again, this wasn't my plan, and I was concerned how that would work out. But I did it. I took the risk, and we moved. So did very well with the first company was Procter & Gamble that I worked for. Was a high achiever there, won a lot of awards, did some great stuff. And so the career was moving well. So we were ready to start having children, have a baby. And so my wife and I thought, well, this will be easy, because you always hear the story about people having children, and it's glorious and it's wonderful, but not for everybody. So we wanted to have a baby so bad, and my wife ended up having a miscarriage in her first trimester, the first time she got pregnant. And then it was several months later, possibly even a year later, she got pregnant again, and we were thrilled. And again, she lost the baby in the first trimester. So I began to think, what is going on? I wanted to have a happy family, and that's not even working out. And failure was written all over it. And I kept going back to my 8-year-old self, not being able to write his name, thinking, what's going to happen? What's going on? So my wife got pregnant again, and we were thrilled, but we decided to wait and not do anything as far as the nursery or anything of that nature until the last trimester, because we wanted to make sure. So sure enough, she did great in the first trimester, great in the second trimester. The third trimester, literally about a week or two away from her giving birth, she was a nurse and she felt the baby was not moving. So we lived at the time in New Orleans. So we drove across that long 24-mile Lake Pontchartrain Bridge to Metairie, and we met with the doctor, and sure enough, the baby had died. And it was heartbreaking. I mean, as I think about it now, it's like, it still hits me. It was really, really difficult. So it was on the 4th of July, 1990, when we were crossing that causeway, and I was pleading with God, why is this happening? I was angry with God for the first time in my life, and I saw failure written all over it. So we decided to get away from family and the location where we were living on the north shore of the bridge in Mandeville, Louisiana, and we went up to Gatlinburg. But prior to going up there, there was a lady in the business that I was working for that said, hey, I know of a mother who has a child that she wants to give up for adoption that lives in another state. Would you guys be interested? And, we had just gone through this traumatic event. And I said, I can't tell you that right now. I don't know for sure. But let us go. We're believers. We're going to pray about it. And when we come back, we'll let you know. And she said, well, you could lose the baby because somebody else could get the baby if you don't make a decision now. I said, we just can't do that. So we went away, we came back, and we got excited, and we decided that we would go ahead and move forward on this. So a friend of mine who was an oil and gas attorney said, I want to help you with this adoption. I don't know anything about adoption, but I'm going to learn about it, and I want to help you. But before I do it, I want to meet the birth mother. Well, we had a closed adoption, so we weren't going to meet her per se. And so he wanted to go up there with me. And so I said, okay, well, I'll just stay in the hotel room, and you can go meet the birth mother. So he went away to do that. And of course, driving up there from New Orleans, we talked the whole way up. I told him about losing the baby on the 4th of July, 1990, and how horrible that was and gut-wrenching. And so anyway, he went and met with the mother. He comes back to the hotel room where I am, and he looks like he's seen a ghost. And I'm thinking, what is going on? And he looked at me, and he said, Larry, you need to sit down. And I said, what do you mean? He said, just sit down. And he said, guess when the lady found out she was expecting? July the 4th, 1990. The same day that we were crossing that Causeway Bridge, and I was pleading with God and angry with God, God was preparing a child for us. That was sobering, very sobering. This is my wife, Jenny, when she was expecting. I didn't show you that picture. And this is our bundle of joy, Maggie. We got her when she was 18 hours old, and she's been an incredible blessing. She's 30, I think she's 33 now. And then right after that, a year after that, not exactly a year, but 11 months and probably 28 days, we had another child, Emily. And this is them growing up together. Best of friends. The Lord blessed us tremendously, more than we even imagined he would. So we serve a God of provisions. Romans 8:28 says, all things work together for good. Everything works together for good to those who call the Lord and are called according to his purpose. 2 blessings from the Lord. So then I would go back into business, and I'm still very, very busy with business. I'm a high achiever, trying to do the best that I can. And I work for a large healthcare company now. I win amazing trips. I was the second out of 100 salespeople. One trip to Big Island, Hawaii, went to Bali, Indonesia. I went to an international sales meeting, and I was going to be awarded a top prize, and I was very excited about it. And even had people who knew I was going to be winning the award congratulating me before I got up there. And then I found out right before they were making the announcement that there was some qualification that I had to also hit that I didn't hit. And I was devastated. I felt like a failure again. And I'm thinking, come on, Larry, you wanted children, you got children. I've been looking after you. Why are you doing this again? Why are you doing this? And I began to realize that the most important thing in my life was impacting other people and leaving a legacy. We just have a short amount of time on earth. And when you get to be my age and older, you begin to look back on the things that really don't matter as much as you would think. So I started a ministry at my church at the time called Brave Hearts. And it was men mentoring sons of single mothers. So these were boys who didn't have fathers or any male influence in their lives. And we ended up with 25 men and 25 boys. And they would encourage them, help them to learn to shave, help them to learn to change a tire on the car, do all sorts of things. And the mothers were ecstatic because weekly they were getting calls, and the kids were doing well and really enjoying having that male influence on their life. So about that time, I went to hear a young African choir. And my wife and I went to hear this young African choir, and there was a little boy named Demby who we picked. On the back table, they had pictures of the different children. And so I picked the picture of Demby. And we had 2 ladies in the house, my 2 daughters. I had a girl wife and 2 girl dogs. So we lived in an estrogen palace, is what I used to call it. So we needed a break. So we picked Demby, the little boy. He was 6 years old at the time. So Demby would often write me notes and send color pictures, and It was really sweet. And we kept doing that for years and years and years. Then about 10 years into my relationship with him, he was 16, he wanted to know when I was coming. And I said, coming where? He goes, to Uganda. And I had not had that even on my radar. So during each call after that, he would ask, and I just didn't have an answer for him. I didn't know what to say because I wasn't planning to go over there. So again, moving forward in my life, I decided to move from corporate America, which was comfortable, but yet not what I wanted to do, and start my own company. And it was a huge risk. It was the biggest risk, one of the biggest risks I've ever made. So I heard the Lord speak to me one morning when I was in the shower to go for it. All I heard was, I was thinking about it. I just heard, just go for it. So I talked to my wife and I said, what do you think? And she said, I think you should do it. So I was excited and I started my own business. I was doing merger and acquisitions work for private equity companies in the healthcare services space. So 3 years into my business, year 1, no income. Year 2, no income. Year 3, no income. I began to really think, was that the Lord or something else? I was getting very concerned. But my wife of now 40 plus years told me, the Lord spoke to you, so you need to stick with it. Failure was trying to creep back in to the little Larry that was 8 years old, trying to write his name. I was now determined that I was not going to let fear call the shots in my life. For the next 2 years combined were the greatest 2 years in my entire career. I earned more in the 2 years than I did in probably 4 years combined. So I made up for the 3 and then almost made up for the additional 2. So God has blessed me and continues to bless me in my business. So what I want to tell you on that is don't let uncertainty talk to you into pursuing a backup plan, because God celebrates our attempts. It really is about risk. And it's easy to settle for the backup plan, especially when you're alone and you're thinking through your mind, what if I fail? What if I fail? What if you don't fail? So it's important to take risks, calculated ones. So Africa, here it is, it's time. So my good friend who's here, Greg Lewis, who introduced me to Africa, said, hey, I'm going to Uganda. I'm going to encourage some people with Go and Tell Ministries, and I'd like for you to come along with me to visit some of the missionaries that need encouragement, meet Dembi, and so forth. And so other than my salvation, my wife and children, this was the next best yes that I've ever done in my life. And it propelled me into my destiny. It was just one yes. I could have easily said, no, I'm not going to do that. But it changed my life in a very, very outstanding way. So I met Dembi. I met his whole family. It was like liquid love. They were so excited to meet me. They'd been waiting all these years, and it was wonderful. I got to know him very well. He was 20 years old when I met him for the first time. We started writing when he was 6, and now he was 20. That's us having dinner in Entebbe, which is one of the big cities in Uganda. So we really got to know each other, and it was wonderful. So we traveled up to the northeast part of the country of Uganda. Very, very, very poor. It is third world. This is not third world. That was. Basically where people earn about $1 a day. We traveled up there. It's about 2 hours from the Kenyan border. My friend had met a pastor, Greg, had met a pastor who was teaching at a refugee camp in the area. And he had asked Greg to come visit him at his church. So Greg's first experience to meet him at his church as well. So one of the things I began to do as I met these different people on the trip was just to ask them, what are your dreams? What are your visions? What are your goals? And so when I asked him and he was in that remote area, I'm thinking he's going to say, I need to raise some chickens, or I need some goats, or I need some cows. And I'm like, well, I can do that. That's easy. So when I asked him and I was expecting that answer, he said, I grew up as an orphan. I saw how hard life was. And I want to start a children's village, a church, a school, and a medical clinic. And I'm like, wow. I didn't say it to him, but I'm thinking, wow, my mind was spinning. How in the world are we going to do all of that? I had no idea. So got back to the U.S. and decided to start a ministry to fulfill the vision of this Ugandan pastor and others, a ministry of hope, and For His Glory Ministries started. One of the stories that I remember that touched me and got me to this point was a good friend of mine who's here today, Greg Lewis. Greg's here, Frank Gray, my friend Frank Gray, who many of you know. So I told Frank a little bit about what I was doing, and I started showing him pictures. And as Frank was looking at the pictures, he began to cry. And I thought, wow, what's going on? And I said, what's happening? He said, when I was a little boy, Larry, my daughter and I, or my sister and I, would sit on the steps outside of our home, and we'd pretend we were flying planes to Africa to help feed the children. And so I knew by that he was in. So he helped with the name and also went over with me to Africa. So we rented a home, and it's been 2 years, June of 2022. We've rescued 50 children. It's a 4-bedroom home. We have triple bunk beds in each of the rooms. And one of the verses that really hit me was, defend the poor and fatherless, do justice to the afflicted and needy. I saw that verse combined with everything else. I said, I've got to do something, because these kids were literally without a home, without parents. They were orphans and had nowhere to go. So that verse propelled me into moving forward. So we rented the home. There's me. Can you pick out the Mzungu? That's what they call white people, Mzungu. So there's the Mzungu. Beautiful children, super loving and kind, happy. You would never know they didn't have anything. So this is the home we rented. It's in a little town called Abim, about 2 hours from the Kenyan border. And here are some pictures of some of the things we purchased. One of the very first things that I purchased for them was play equipment. Believe it or not, in this town with so many kids, there was no play equipment, no swings, no slides, nothing. So I'm like, well, we'll just get some play equipment. Well, there's not a Costco there. There's not a Home Depot there. No electricity, no running water. There's nothing there. So we ordered this equipment that had to be actually made by hand, and it was trucked 12 hours up to the children's home. And the kids play on it every day. They love it. And it really touches me every time that I see them on there, because they're having so much fun. So we started to outgrow the home. We've got, like I said, 50 children. We've got triple bunk beds, four bedrooms. So we've got 12 kids per room. It's pretty packed. So we purchased 20 acres about a mile away. I missed this, but this is some of the kids. This is Ivan on the left. Ivan is the one that I helped rescue about 2 years ago. His mother was an alcoholic, and she would go for days, and he and his sister would beg for food, and he was completely malnourished, big belly, but sweet little heart. And he's now, this is probably about a year and a half later, looking great with his friend Helen with 2 L's. In 2004, I began supporting a 6-year-old orphan named Dembe. I was able to meet him in person when he turned 21. This long journey unfolded in a way that only God could open as he traveled with me to northeast Uganda to a town called Abim.
It's a very difficult place to get to. It is literally planes, trains, and automobiles to get there.
This area is very remote, and people literally work to eat and pay for their school fees while earning only about $1 a day.
Spending 24 hours in a plane is difficult, but it makes it all worth it as soon as you see the children and they run up to you with so much joy. They want you to feel loved, welcomed. They want to know you and they want you to know them. And they give you all of the opportunity to do that, to play with them, to sing with them, to worship. And they are just bursting with joy that is only from God.
In 2 short years, we've rented a home, rescued 50 orphans, many of whom were only a few months away from death.
Ivan was a young boy of 3 years old. His mom was an alcoholic who would leave for days. He was rescued and now is safe. And after only a few months, he has doubled his weight and is smiling all the time now.
Robert was a young teen whose parents had just died of AIDS. He had nowhere to go, and he had AIDS as well. He was our first person to live in the children's home prior to opening. He is now improving and happy to be a part of a family.
After I finish my studies, I want to be engineer.
Just a few short years ago, the only aspirations of these children were to survive and to find their next meal. Now, because of your support, there are children that want to be doctors, drivers, preachers, mothers, fathers, and more. Help us in teaching them how to use their gifts for His glory and find their purpose in the Lord.
Right now, with the 50 that we have, I can see them excited. They can read scriptures together. They pray together. They share the word together. They eat together. They fellowship together. And through this ministry, I see light coming in their lives. I am very excited and very optimistic that in few months and years to come, we are going to have the best citizens of Uganda.
These children are amazing. I was blown away by the joy and love these children have. You have an opportunity to truly connect and make an impact that will last forever. You will become a family member when you sponsor one of these children.
Sponsor a child today, and you will change a life forever, but you may find that your life changes as well.
So in early 2025, we'll begin to build the homes, the church, the school, and the medical clinic with our goal to take care of 200 children. When we look at the plans for the future of all the orphans, I remember Matthew 25:40. This is the actual land. I've kind of gone back and forth a little bit, but this is the land. You can see the fence around it and the gate in front. That's the 20 acres. And this is the diagram that we're looking at doing. There'll be homes that there'll be a mother and possibly a father and 10 children in each of the homes. So it's more like a family than it is a dorm or an orphanage. And then we'll incorporate the school later and the church too. So I think about the verse, there's a verse, Matthew 25:40, and it says, whatever you've done to the least of these, you've done it to me. And that was Jesus talking. So he gets excited when we care for the underprivileged, especially the orphans. I want to tell you about a little girl that I met only 2 weeks ago. I was there in Abim 2 weeks ago, and a lady told us about a baby who was in really, really bad shape. Her mother was an alcoholic. The aunt was caring for the child, but the aunt had other duties. And so she would go and work in the fields all day. She would leave the baby, who was 2 years old, under a mango tree, a very large mango tree, for shelter. And the baby would sit there literally all day long for weeks. And we went over, and in the distance you could hear crying, and she was crying. And she was crying because the kids around her that were probably about 10 or 20 feet away were eating mangoes, and she was hungry. Well, we scooped her up. We talked to the aunt, and she said, yes, I can't take care of her. I would love for you to take care of her. We began to love on her, give her porridge, hold her close to us. Precious little girl. Took her to the hospital. Her eyes were almost shut from the edema that she had, an edema in her feet. And so this is right after she got released from the hospital. So what I would say to you is, I cannot help but ask for a few things. Number one, I'll be available afterwards, as well as some of the board members who will be out in the back by the doors. And if any of this touched your heart and you want to learn more about it, we have a QR code you can scan. We're in desperate need of sponsors. We have 50 children and 25 sponsors, but each month we have enough. I don't know how that works, but we do. It's the Lord, obviously. And then number 2 is come go with me. I'm going in October. See it for yourself. Why not? It may be your best yes. It was mine. In closing, I want to reflect on my life, all the big moments and the small ones. I felt like I was failing. And I can see now this was leading me to a greater sense of purpose, which I have found. I want to leave you with 2 quotes. Our greatest fear should not be in failing, but at succeeding at things that don't really matter. Again, our greatest fear should not be in failing, but in succeeding at things that don't really matter. And finally, you don't find your mission finds you. And it found me in Uganda. Thanks so much. I appreciate your time.